giving that moment of acknowledgement before giving a response, especially when you get into like an argument or like a heated discussion. So like back and forth, my turn to talk, my turn, my turn, giving that person honor first of, hey, I hear you. I completely understand what you're saying. I feel this way. Just that small like acknowledgement of like their feelings, letting them know that I heard you. I wasn't just thinking in my head about how I'm gonna respond to you and cuss you out right now. I actually listened to you. That changes how we communicate a lot. He was just kind of like brushing it off, but then like after a while he's like, I think I'm gonna stop watching porn. We decided like, okay, we're gonna do away with porn. We're not doing it anymore. We're not giving into that culture. And that's when we really got deep into that like spiritual path and like focusing on each other and that intimacy and sex on like a spiritual level. And it's next level. And one thing I feel like we should focus on more is connection. Our culture in the United States, it's like fast paced and go to work and make money and go to work and come home and be tired and cook dinner. It's really hard to foster connections. Like we said earlier, it's hard to foster connection with your spouse. If you have more than one child, like, oh my God, making time for one to build a bond and connection with that child, and two, taking time even in moments of like frustration, even like in moments of like pressure, and forget everything else and everybody else and just focus on that little like soul that you brought into the world. Children are going to model what we do before they do what we say.
That was Destiny Bennett, an author, speaker, content creator, parenting coach, educator, and wife and mother to 3 boys. Her life's work and purpose revolves around her journey through and connection to motherhood and relationships. And she's passionate about helping others foster authentic connection with their children and restore their marriages. She uses every life-changing lesson she's learned through her marriage, her business, and her own self-discovery as an opportunity to pour into others who can resonate. I find Destiny so inspiring and love all the content she shares, so be sure to follow her on Instagram at They Call Me Mama Bennett. And you can get her book, Revised Not Repeated, A Brown Mom's Guide to Breaking Generational Curses in Parenting, linked below in the show notes and description box. This conversation is packed with practical tips and life experiences to implement in your own life. Destiny shares her marriage secrets that helped restore their marriage that was once greatly suffering after all they've gone through, ways that couples can make time for intimacy when life is so busy, how porn was destroying their marriage, healthy communication tips in navigating arguments and disagreements with your partner, how to change toxic generational patterns in parenting, respecting your child's individuality, fostering authentic connection over punishment, and so much more. Both your relationship with your partner and your relationship with your children are intertwined, because how we model our relationship with our partner teaches our children how to be in relation with others. And respecting one another extends not only to your partner, but to your kids as well. I hope you find this conversation as enlightening and inspiring as I did. Welcome to the Ellen Fisher podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Destiny. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I have admired your work for a while now. I don't even remember how I came across your content, but I think maybe someone reposted an Instagram reel of yours or something. And it was a video clip of you getting down on your knee and talking to your child, one of your children, maybe your middle child, when he was struggling with something emotionally, and you were sharing tips on how to help your child manage their emotions in a supportive way that teaches them, guides them, and helps them feel loved through it. And I just like instantly fell in love with what you were sharing, because you do something different, I think, than a lot of like respectful parenting type of content creators, because you're sharing like exact tips on individual situations.
Right.
Like a lot of books are very generalized, like philosophical, which is all really helpful too.
Right.
But a lot of times it's like, okay, but now what? What do I do when my kid's screaming? What do I do when this is happening?
In this actual moment.
In this actual moment. And so I found that really practical and really helpful. So I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love what I do. I love being able to share, and I get that a lot, that's like the aspect that people like, is that like I actually show what the moments look like. And I feel like that's helpful, like from my viewpoint, because I'm a visual person. Like I need to see it, I can hear it, I can try to apply it, but I just feel like it's easier to like see it. So yeah, I'm super excited to get into it.
Yeah, and I also want to talk to you about like intentional marriage too. And I know that's a lot of the content you share too, which is really helpful because especially in the young parenting years is when it's easy to let go
Right.
of the, you know, the important aspect of your relationship with your partner.
Right.
So all the stuff that you share combined, I feel like is so synchronistic. So before I get into like specific questions, what led you to becoming passionate about this, about both these things?
Oh my God. Okay, so I went through hell. The last 10 years have been the hell that have given me the opportunity to like learn and like share my journey. I always like joke with my husband that I'm like, I feel like God literally put us through every possible thing we could have gone through so that we are able to share with like a wide range of people and like relate to a wide range of people. So everything that I share is like from experience. Excuse me. And it's just like when I was going through, I felt alone a lot of times, like very isolated, especially because I was a young mom. I got married young. So it was like trying to like relate, you know, with my marriage issues to like my friends that are like in college and going to parties. And I'm like, so I just felt very isolated. And it wasn't until like I got older that I'm like looking at all of these like older couples that I was looking up to. And I'm like, oh my God, they all went through this too. But no one talks about it. Like parents don't talk about it. Social media doesn't talk about like the struggles. It's all like the beautiful things, you know? So when I started to realize that, I'm like, there has to be other people that are in like a dark place in parenting or in marriage or wanting to do something different or, you know, don't feel like it'll be accepted in their support system or don't have a support system. And I just wanted to be kind of like I wanted to create a community for that. So that is what kind of encouraged me to start like sharing. And I never expected for it to like get as big as it did. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I've been able to like touch a lot of lives, and that's really what's been keeping me going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and partially from what I've seen of your content, based on where you came from before, like especially in your marriage to where you are today, can you kind of share about that story?
Oh God, which part? There's a lot. My husband and I got married at 18 and 20. We were super young. We had only been dating for 8 months.
Wow.
And we were pregnant by the time we got married.
Wow.
So it was really hard. I feel like we kind of like had to like grow up really fast. And at the same time, we also had to like raise each other because like we were just kind of like thrown out into the world with no idea on how to like what it looks like to be married. You know, he came from a home where it was like his parents weren't married, but his stepdad had been in his life since he was like 5, and they're still married to this day. So like he comes from a home of like his grandparents had been married for like 50 plus years. Like he comes from a home of marriage. I come from a home of divorce. So there were a lot of things that like we weren't on the same page on. And like at the same time, no one had really, because we were so young, no one had been like hands-on with us about like guiding us through marriage. We just kind of had to figure it out on our own. And I feel like that in itself caused a lot of like conflict and a lot of disconnection and a lot of just like butting heads like consistently. And every single thing that we went through, we had to like figure out like what the lesson was in it. Mm-hmm. To get us through like the hundreds of lessons to get us to where we are now.
Yeah.
I never thought we would be where we are now.
Wow.
Ever.
And you guys started so young. you kind of like were thrust into the having kids phase right after your honeymoon phase of your relationship.
Right.
Not even just like true legitimate honeymoon after marriage, but like the honeymoon phase of a relationship is like that beginning phase.
Right.
And you're so young, so there's like so many factors that come into play. So you had a lot of stuff against you.
Right.
But what brought you through? What was the change for? Like, what was the pivotal change that brought you through that to where you guys are today?
Allergies, dear God.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
It was like it was a runny nose, and now it's this. Well, I'll say for one, my husband was in the military, and that was a lot of pressure. So like when he got out of the military, it it changed a lot. It's like it gave us the opportunity to actually start growing, because when he was in the military, he was working like 40 plus hours nonstop, 24/7. When he was home, he was tired, he was grumpy, you know? So like coming out of the military is when we like finally started like going to counseling and really like started working on ourselves. But I would say like the real shift came after I got pregnant with my my last baby. We had like a really big scare with him. We found out at like 27 weeks that he had an enlarged bladder. Like it was like completely random. We went for like a 3D ultrasound. Everything was normal. We just wanted to get some fun pictures, and like the lady that was doing our ultrasound was like terrified, and she was like, "When's the last time you've been to the doctors?" And I'm like, I don't know, like, you know, everything's fine. But ultimately we ended up finding out that he had something to where his bladder was enlarged because it couldn't release, and so it was backing up into his kidney. So it got to a point where they were like, well, we can do an abortion, like and I'm like 30 weeks pregnant, like So it was a really huge scare, and I feel like it really was like, okay, either we're gonna be in this together, like we're gonna work this out together, or we're gonna go our separate ways, because this was like the trial for us, and we really like buckled through and like pulled each other through it, because we didn't know if our baby was gonna make it, you know. And that sent us down like a really deep like spiritual path, and us building on that and finally being able to like see each other and focus on each other and build. And then he lost his job, and so we had a lot more time together. So that was kind of like a pivotal point for us.
Yeah. And then how was it going through the rest of the pregnancy together? Like that's the point where you're like finding this growth, and also maybe a little bit scared of like the unknown,
right,
what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And how did everything kind of play out?
It I mean, ultimately obviously it went well, because we're better than we've ever been, but it was definitely like hard times. It actually makes me kind of sad. I know, like I was saying, like I don't know if we want to have another baby or not, but I'm like, I feel like I kind of got robbed, because my last pregnancy was so scary.
Yeah, so traumatic.
that I didn't get to like thoroughly enjoy it. But you know, we were really strong in our faith, and like I said, that's a period where we started getting really strong in our faith. So we were just really confident that like everything was gonna work out. We were just really like staying positive, and ultimately everything did work out. You know, my son still has like issues. He still sees a specialist till this day, but like he's alive. He's not, you know, his life isn't at risk. So that really like strengthened our faith. And it was kind of like, okay, we got through that together. Like we might as well just finish like getting our stuff together, and working it out. And it just sent us through, like I said, like a really deep like spiritual path, to where like everything was changing. Our belief system changed, like everything changed. And it just, we were able to kind of create our own dynamic, our own like morals on like what marriage looks like for us, and like what is important to us and what we should focus on, instead of like trying to figure out like what it's supposed to be like, what it's supposed to feel like, what marriage is supposed to look like. That's when we really started to like create our own.
And I think most of the time, or at least for a lot of people, a lot of couples, it isn't until you're at like your really lowest point where you're like, okay, is this like ride or die? Like we're either going to have to figure this out now, or it's over. And so by figuring it out, that's how you end up rebuilding your marriage to where it's even better than it ever was before.
Right.
So do you find that like marriage and like intentional parenting kind of go hand in hand? Because I know that when my husband and I are like on this really good wavelength where we're both just like vibing together and we're really treating each other the way we should be, and we're deeply bonded, like our children see that, and even when we think they're not looking, they are looking. Right. And then they respond in that way. Like they respond in a positive way from that, because when they see their parents are strengthened and strong, they feel secure, they feel confident in their family life. And how's that experience been for you?
No, yeah, definitely. For one, I feel like like everything that we represent, everything that we believe in, it's just intentional lifestyle. I feel like I have to split it up for the purpose of like social media because I have a lot of like community members that are married but they don't have kids, or you know, they have kids but they're not married. So it's like some can relate to, you know, some parts, some can't, but it's just intentional living. It's intentional living. It's intentional eating. It's like, it's everything goes hand in hand. So definitely the marriage part and the parenting part go together. And I feel like they correlate so much that it's like, when I'm giving examples of like, oh, this is, you know, how you're supposed to treat your child. And I have so many people that are like, yeah, that's how you're supposed to treat your coworkers and like your family members. So it's like the way I try to like implement, like, you know, communicating with my husband, good communication with my husband is the same way I try to implement good communication with my children. Like they cross so much. And definitely like us having that intentional relationship and being like intentional with each other, not only does it make my kids feel more like secure, but it's also like it's modeling for them like how to communicate. And it's like to the point where, especially with my oldest, because he was the one that was around for most of like the drama. Like he remembers like, you guys used to argue all the time. So like he gets really triggered when we argue, like we're not doing that again. And I'm like, no, we're not. Even if we're just like joking around, but it's like, you know, it's loud. He's like, no. And I'm like, we're just kidding. Because he will like totally hold us accountable. And I love that. Like, I love that he's able to see like, this is what it's supposed to look like. So like, I'm going to keep you guys in line. And so even if we get like into a heated discussion, he'll come in and he'll just stand there. We're like, yeah, we'll bring it down.
I even had my 3-year-old, well, she's 4 now, but when she was 3 at the time, she's had times where she could see me getting heated and she'd be like, Mom, everything's going to be okay. She's like, it's okay, calm down, deep breaths. Like she'll say things that I've said to her and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's
it's
it.
The best.
I know, it's the best.
I love that. My kids do that too. And I'm like, it's my favorite part of parenting is like getting to see them like model back to me like, oh, you were listening.
Yes, I know. All the times when you think that they're not listening, they really are. And it goes the same, like you said, with how their parents are acting. It's totally modeling to them how they should be in life and how they should treat others.
Right.
Yeah. So can you tell us some of your marriage secrets? What are some of those secrets? I've seen you like do some reels, like marriage secrets part 1 and 2. Like what can people gain those special secrets from to like help rebuild their marriage and just strengthen their bond?
So I would say number 1, biggest like transition for us. And I'm like, I don't know if they're like secrets per se, but number 1 is like communication. Like, I don't think people really realize how important communication is, because I feel like most people aren't raised to like communicate effectively. Like that's not something you learn in like school. Like, you know, like it's just not, and it's not something your parents really teach you. So I feel like so many arguments that me and my husband had could have been avoided by just having like proper communication and like having like that like empathy factor and like listening and not just like I'm waiting for you to finish talking so I can talk. You know, there's a lot of like ego that goes into communication, and if you're not communicating like intentionally and like bringing that ego down and actually like connecting with your partner, even when they're like saying things that you don't want to hear or you're frustrated with them, like it can go really south if you're not being intentional about that. So I feel like that was one of the biggest changes that we made that like significantly changed our relationships, like changing the way we communicate with each other, and even like the parts that weren't even like necessarily improper, but it wasn't our communication style. Like my husband, like I said, he's very like military and he's very like tough love, and you know, and I'm like, he's the oldest in his family. I'm the baby. So I'm like, don't talk to me like that. Yeah. Like talk to me gently. Yeah. So it was like so much like going back and forth and like him trying to understand, like, I don't understand why what I'm saying to you is wrong. And I'm like, it's not wrong. It's just how you're saying it. Yeah. I don't like that.
My gosh. The amount of arguments my husband and I have had because of that simple thing. It's not even what you're saying. It's just the way you're saying it to me.
It's the delivery.
And they're just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, get over it. Like that.
It is like the biggest part So that's definitely like one of the hugest things. And we actually just finished filming like a whole like communication course, because it's not something that people talk to you about, but it's like one of the most effective things for like changing the dynamic of your relationship. So
in every relationship, like
any relationship,
that's the harmony, the synchronicity. Like, that's not a word. Synchronicity, that's not a word. My sister's gonna make fun of me. Synchronistic, it doesn't matter.
Well, we're on the same page.
We're on the same page. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like, all of it together is, everything goes so much smoother when you like have really good communication skills and how to talk to other people.
Yeah, and it's like it all comes down to like self, and that's also something that like a lot of people don't really realize. Like, we go into the world like blaming other people and trying to figure out what other people are doing that's causing the problem, and it's like sometimes it's us.
Sometimes
like with
it's
that communicate. Like, I do a lot better now. I say I'm at like 89%, but I've always had a really bad issue with like body language. And that just pushes my husband's buttons, because like he can be talking to me and I'm like rolling my eyes and crossing my arms, and he's like, you're not, never mind. Like, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. And I'm like, I'm listening to you. I'm quiet. So it's just like those little things that it's like, you can totally play the victim and be like, I was just sitting there and listening, and then he just stormed off, and you don't take accountability for like what you're doing to contribute. And that was also like a big thing that we had to like look into ourselves, you know, instead of just blaming each other for everything.
We're brought to you today by a favorite apothecary shop of mine called Anima Mundi Herbals. They specialize in high-potency elixirs, medicinal mushrooms, and collagen boosters, and support true fair trade practices beyond organic farming, education, and small farmers to create remedies that benefit people from all walks of life. I love the immunity boosters in their shop, including black elderberry syrup, mushroom mocha milk, and spirulina, which is an organic protein-rich mineralizer that tastes delicious in banana mango smoothies. The robust protein found in spirulina, containing all 9 of the essential amino acids, is extremely bioavailable with up to 85% digestibility. And it's rich in B vitamins, which are essential to the health of the central nervous system and the brain to boost your mood and cognitive power. I'm also obsessed with their happiness powder, which is an energizing and mood-boosting herbal coffee that is caffeine-free and adaptogenic, and is energized with some of the top herbs researched to increase a sense of peace and happiness, such as ashwagandha. I like it served warm with plant milk and maple syrup. But my favorite items in their shop tend to my feminine and pregnant body. Their Goddess Magic Healing and Moisturizing Bundle includes a collagen booster face oil, womb tea, blue lotus flowers, and a rose body oil, which is just divine. Anima Mundi uses eco-friendly packaging and recyclable glass or biodegradable bags. I got an awesome discount code for you guys. So use my code ELLEN15 for 15% off anything at animamundiherbals.com. That's ANIMAMUNDIHERBALS.com. Yeah, I definitely think that the majority of the time it's so easy for us when we go into a disagreement with anyone or an argument, especially with your partner, but anybody, right? You go into it like what they did wrong,
right?
And instead of being like, what role did I play,
right?
What did I do that I could learn from and that I can do differently next time? And then instead of like blaming everybody else for your problems, like taking accountability for yourself and be like, well, all I can change is myself.
Yes.
All I can change is what I can do to help the situation.
Yes.
And if you both are doing that,
right,
fireworks. It's going to be major difference instead of pointing and blaming. Because when you go into an argument and you're like, well, no, you did this and this and this. I don't like the way you did this. And if you're both doing that at each other, like the likelihood it's going to be resolved easily is a lot smaller.
Yes.
Than the way that you can talk in a healthy way. So what would be an example of like a healthy way that you can communicate when you're having a disagreement with your partner? You could see the argument getting heated. Like, what's an example of how to talk differently? One way you're maybe tempted to talk instead of like how to shift even the language of what you would say.
Oh gosh, I don't know if it's even. I feel like one way that we really shift the language specifically is like that accountability language. So like taking accountability for like your feelings and not like forcing your feelings onto that other person's like actions. Mm-hmm. So like I know that like one of the things that used to irritate my husband so bad, like it will always end up bad when I would be like, you have an attitude, or like you're being this, or you're acting this way, instead of me being like, well, I feel like you feel this way. Like, do you feel that way? You know? So then he can tell me for himself, like, no, I don't. Or, yes, I do. No, I don't have attitude. Yes, I do. I'm upset about something, you know? Like, and it was the same thing for me. Like, there's just something about someone telling you how you feel that's, like, super flustering. So I feel like one of the ways that we just really respected each other and respected each other's feelings and individualities was, like, taking a moment to, like, redirect that and take accountability for the fact that we may just be perceiving it that way. They may not feel that way. Or if they do feel that way, giving them, like, a stage and a safe space to, like, share instead of, like, throwing it at them and be like, oh, you have an attitude, you know? That was a really, really big one for us.
Yeah, I definitely have found that helpful too, like saying more like, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling unheard, or I'm feeling like maybe you don't care about my feelings, or I'm feeling, instead of saying you don't care about my feelings, you're this and that, it's just saying like, this is how I'm feeling from the situation, and then they're more likely to be able to receive that a lot better.
And then another one, which I kind of use, I mean, like I said, it's all universal, but like even with my kids and with my husband, is like giving that moment of like acknowledgement before giving a response. Because I feel like especially when you get into like an argument or like heated discussion, so like back and forth, my turn to talk, my turn, you know? So like giving that person like honor first of like, hey, I hear you. I completely understand what you're saying. I feel this way. Like just that small like acknowledgement of like their feelings, letting them know that like I heard you. I wasn't just thinking in my head about how I'm going to respond to you and cuss you out right now. It was like I actually listened to you. That changes how we communicate a lot.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Anytime my husband and I get into, even if it's like a little disagreement, sometimes your ego can be tempted to just be like, dismiss it, or be like, oh, that's so, like, just get over it. Or, you know, that's can be an easy thing to say, instead of saying like, oh, I didn't realize that bothered you. Like, I'm sorry. And then it's like over. Like something like that, something so simple a lot of times. And then you can maybe say how you're feeling, like you can say how you're feeling afterwards. It depends on the situation, right? But sometimes like, for my husband and I, it can be something really little that I just feel like, okay, you know, this bothered me, like, and it's easy to just want to like dismiss it, but then that actually makes you, it's like a like love coin taking out of your bank, like you're like, oh, I feel unheard, like the way I feel didn't matter to him, but instead responding in a way that's like, oh, like I didn't realize that would bother you, like I'm sorry. Even just something so little like that goes the longest way.
It does. And it's like, even I try to do, even if I'm like, oh my God, what he's saying right now is total BS. But it's like, it's all about, like I said, that ego and like understanding that we are not two individual people. We are one team working together. And like when that ego hits, I feel like sometimes it makes you feel like it's me against him. It's him, you know, against me. It's me against the world. So like you naturally go into that like defense mode to where it's like, I have to protect me. So I feel like when you're more conscious about that and realizing that like we're a team, this person loves me and I love them as well. Like it's not, you know, it makes it just makes the goal more clear of like, okay, he's feeling unheard right now. I don't agree with what he's saying, but I'm going to make sure that he feels heard, because that's going to be important to him, and it's going to be important in closing this discussion out in a peaceful way instead of escalating it. It's kind of like that, like taking one for the team, like picking your battles type of thing.
Yeah, I've seen you say before how when you shifted your mindset from like me against him against me, to us against the problem. That is a really, I feel like, revolutionary way to consider the issue at hand. Be like, okay, now it's us and against the problem. We're trying to figure out this problem together. And that, like, I feel like that shifts a lot in your mindset.
Yeah.
And something else that I see you share a lot is intimacy. So how can couples make time for intimacy when your life is so busy, especially with raising young kids?
Right. Yeah. That was actually, I was like, that's going to be like my number 2, like marriage secret. Oh my God. Intimacy.
Oh yeah, I know. We only really got into one marriage secret.
Well, I only had 2. So
yeah, 2 marriage secrets.
No, intimacy is so important. And I feel like that was number 2. That might have been like that and communication might have gone hand in hand of like destroying my marriage. Like if we did not get through that, I don't know if me and my husband would be together till this day. And it's just the simple fact, it's not even about sex. It's intimacy. It's so important, and it's another one of those things that it's like it's not taught, and especially for men, but even for women. I feel like us as women, we kind of crave intimacy naturally, but like it's not something we're taught about, you know, and it's not something men are taught about. So like when people come together, it's like, okay, do we have a little bit of time? Let's have sex. And it's like, it doesn't have to be sex. And we kind of came to that realization because like after I had my firstborn, my sex drive was like out the window. Like it was gone. And like, it was like, we went through a phase where my husband was like, do you like me anymore? And I'm like, yeah, no, you're great. It was just like, there was nothing.
Everything in your body is going towards like taking care of your baby, and it's very natural, especially like with breastfeeding. Like the hormones in your body is all focused on like not making more children. It's on raising this baby that you have right in front of you.
Yeah, it's a huge shift for moms, and it's like I feel like it's something that like we get like ashamed about, so like we don't talk about it. So that was like one of those things where I was like going through such a dark place because I'm like, oh my God, I'm broken. What's wrong with me? And it took years, literally years. And it got to a point where it was like, it was causing a disconnection between us because we didn't know how else to be intimate. It was like, we came into marriage young and like frisky, and that was our thing, you know? So it was like, okay, so like,
now
what now, you know? And it's like, now it's not just like, oh, we can just like cuddle up or, you know, like whatever anytime, because now we have a child, now we have 2 children, now we have 3 children. So when we started like really deep focusing on intimacy, it took a huge shift in our relationship. That was like the biggest, like the last and biggest shift that we took that sent us like in the right direction. And when we started that, we just came to the conclusion, because I was just like, dude, like, I'm just not interested in sex. Like, I'm just not. And so we did like a no sex fast for 30 days. And like, we were just like, okay, we're not doing it. You know, when we are doing it, we're not enjoying it because, you know, I don't want to do it and he wants to do it and he can't enjoy it if I don't want to do it. So it's just like, let's just be intentional about it. And during that time, like, we really just focused on like connecting, like in a spiritual way, and like eye gazing and meditating and like just focusing on each other. Because prior to that, it was like our intimate time, or time when we weren't like having sex, was like watching a movie or, you know, something where it's like we weren't actually focusing on each other.
Right.
So like we did during that time, it was like no screens, like it was like super strict. And that was like the best 30 days of our life. And like after that was over, it was like fireworks.
Yeah.
Like it all came back.
Totally.
And so it was like a realization, like, oh my God, like I'm like, of course part of it was like hormonal, but also I feel like I was able to overcome that because I was like, I was able to reconnect with my husband, like deeply reconnect with him. And moving forward from that like 30-day fast, we kind of started to realize that like it didn't take like long date nights and walks on the beach. Like it was just like those pockets of time that we reserved for each other that were like only focused on us. And so that's what I tell like a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, well, what do I do? And I don't have time to spend time with my husband. And I'm like, well, when you and your husband are home, what do you do? Oh, well, we watch TV together. Okay, turn the TV off.
Yeah.
Like,
start that.
Right, to turn the TV off. Like, if the kids are like asleep, take like 15 minutes, you know, before you guys go to bed. Like, I know you're tired. Take that 15 minutes. Like, just do something intimate. It doesn't take a lot. I feel like the thought that like it takes hours of time to get a connection, it just automatically makes you feel like defeated, and it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. So that's been our thing that like gets us through like those pockets of time, and like we dedicate those times to each other, even if it's just like if we're separate and we're texting or, you know, like whatever, we dedicate those times. And then we also have like dedicated like nights where either we'll do like a date night or we'll do like a sex night, like where it's like, this is happening on this night no matter what, you know. And it's like we make sure we reserve the time so that like it doesn't feel rushed and we can take time to connect, and you know. And it's like when you really are like deeply focusing on those moments, it will get you over to the next moment. It's enough to get you to the next moment and keep you connected.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally resonate with it. I don't know if you ever heard of Kim Anami, but she's this like incredible sex guru that I had on my podcast, and the episode's called "Transform Your Sex Life" for those listening or watching, and I definitely recommend you check it out. It was like a very mind blowing. Her philosophy and the stuff that she shares is totally life changing and transforming. At least for my husband and I, like totally transformed our sex life and our intimacy. And one of the things she talks about is keeping the simmer throughout the day. And it's like, as you know, it isn't always the case like the men, women, right? But for a lot of women, or most women, it's one of these things where you can't just be like, oh, you know, I've been busy all day, like my hair's disheveled, I'm doing the dishes, I got spit up on my whatever, on my clothes and changing diapers all day. And now it's like, oh, we got 20 minutes. Babe's like, quick, let's have sex. Right. And you're not like, yeah, I'm so excited to have sex right now. Like, this is just all I want to focus my energy on, right? Yes. Because you have so many other things going on in your head. And if you haven't been keeping that simmer all throughout the day, where you, even if it's like not like you don't, not with your partner during the day, but like throughout the week, right? Little things like a text and things that when you do see each other, that you are connecting and being intimate, not with the idea that you're about to have sex, but just because you love each other, and it's that intimacy that you have for each other, that love, and like it's basically a sex drive that you have for each other too. Right. That keeps that simmer going all throughout the day and week, and then when it is time to have sex, you are so ready to go. Right. Because if you don't have any of that, it's a lot harder, especially when you have young kids, you know, because things are like things do change with you, especially when you just have a baby, but also just when you have so much going on in your head, and it's like the last thing on your mind. Because I can't even tell you how different it is if you get alone time with your partner for like a 2-day period. You're like, wow, I'm like a completely different person. I'm totally into wanting to have sex all day, you know, because I have nothing else on my mind. Right. But because of real life and raising kids, that intimacy throughout the day and keeping that simmer is so important. And so we found that, like, oh, even something as little as just brushing up against each other, like when you're cleaning dishes, coming up behind your partner and loving on each other for like 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds, right? Yes. That stuff throughout the day, and a text and looking at each other, the things you say to each other, that's something like sexy, like then that prepares you for that time when you do have that time to have sex. Yes. Yeah.
No, yeah, that is key. Yeah. And I feel like it's super important. Like, I feel like it's so easy for like women to adapt to that, but I feel like it's sometimes a hard concept for like men. Oh yeah. Especially because it's like we're different. Like most men, it's like they can do anytime, any circumstance, you know. And like we do, like especially after having kids and the hormonal change and everything, like we have to be warmed up, to it. So it's like I feel like that's so important for them to understand, because that was like one of the things, like back in the day, it was like my husband would come home from work, I would be with the kids all day, and it's like, all right, we have 10 minutes, let's do it. Like, I haven't even seen you all day, bro. Yeah. like, excuse me. Like, there's nothing here. So yeah, no, that's super important. And then like the other thing that I feel like changed for me personally, like doing my own self-work, was like my own self-love and like self-care. And that's like another thing I feel like a lot of us like rely on our partner to make us feel like good. And it's like if we don't, once that's lost, if that disconnection gets lost, then it's like, what do we do, you know? And so like when I actually started like just taking like little moments, even like days where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do my makeup today, like I'm going to get out of my pajamas today. Like, I'm going to do something that makes me feel like myself. Because, like, how do you connect with that younger version of yourself pre-children and pre-like stress and, you know, that was like ready, you know, and willing to do that all the time if you're not even connected with that person. And one of the things for me, like I used to love to dance. That was like my thing. I was never very good at it, but I love to do it. And so after I had my third, I joined a pole dancing studio. Oh, cool. And I started pole dancing, like, for fitness. But, like, I was like, oh, my gosh, this makes me feel so sexy. Like, this makes me feel good. And I noticed, like, that feeling good, I was more, like, it helped with my sex drive. It made me feel more willing, you know, because I'm like, I feel sexy. Like, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to engage with you when I feel like trash and I feel like I look like a wildebeest. Like, I just don't. So.
Totally.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so I have another question to ask you is I've seen you share about how porn was destroying your marriage. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, man, yeah, that's one.
That's a great segue into
it is
about intimacy.
It is for sure, and it definitely relates. It's funny because it's like I've never actually talked about it on camera.
Okay,
but I mean, like, let's get into it.
Let's go.
So yeah, I feel like so many of us are introduced to sex the wrong way, and a lot of that is just early exposure to porn or whatever it might have been, like a movie with like a sex scene, or I feel like 90s babies and before, like there was not as much like censorship because I'm like my kids watch like PG movies, and like I remember like my parents watching rated R movies, and when the sex scenes came, they're just like, close your eyes. It's just like, I can still see between your fingers. So I feel like that early exposure, it just creates a really unhealthy relationship with sex. Really unhealthy and really unrealistic, because it's like, that's where we learn about sex. We're not paying attention to what they're teaching in school. We're using the visual aids that we have at home. So with my husband, like specifically, that was something like he was exposed to very early in life. And like it really, really damaged like how he viewed sex.
We're also brought to you today by Buffy. You guys know how much I love these incredibly soft sheets and bedding. And for a limited time, you can get $20 off orders over $80. Just use my code Ellen at checkout. You will be blown away how soft and cozy their cloud comforter is, and the sheets are divine. But aside from that, what makes a Buffy purchase even better is that they use only renewable and recycled materials, which makes them as soft on the planet as they are on your bed. The cloud comforter is covered in ultra breathable eucalyptus fabric, which uses 10 times less water than cotton to grow, and its fiber is produced using recyclable, earth-friendly solvents. Eucalyptus also naturally soothes the skin for an incredible, relaxing night's sleep. But I'm not done with reasons why I am such a huge fan of Buffy. The best part for me is that the average down comforter harms 12 geese, but Buffy's comforter is cruelty-free, using 100% recycled water bottles that are transformed and given a second life as super fluffy fiber. It feels even softer than down while keeping approximately 50 bottles out of landfills and oceans. This comforter has over 18,000 5-star reviews and keeps you at the perfect temperature so you feel cozy without overheating. It's hypoallergenic and machine washable thanks to an innovative stitching pattern that keeps its fluffy fill in place. So don't forget to use my code Ellen at checkout. You can try a comforter in your own bed for free. If you don't love it, return it at no cost.
And I feel like I kind of had that same exposure, but maybe with me being like a female and like everything we just talked about, like going into like motherhood and like all that, it played out differently for me, because it was like by the end of it, like I just wasn't interested anymore. But it was like that was kind of like his thing, that it like kept him going, because we were going such long periods without having sex, you know? And I just like, with everything that we went through, and like now to a point where we've had so many conversations, like so many like deep conversations of like tears and just like, like just really digging into like our past and what we went through, we really came to that realization. Like he was like, it was ruining me, it was ruining like my perception of like what sex was supposed to be like. And it was ruining me, because I'm like, okay, you're watching that, I'm not living up to that right now. Like I'm not even there. I don't look like that. I don't feel like that, So it was just causing such a huge disconnection between us. And it's just, it's so perceived by like society as like normal.
Yeah, it is.
And so like for him, it was like, what? Like it's just porn, But I was just like, it doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel right, But it's like, how do you explain that to someone when it's like, it's normal? It's like, hey, I'm just eating a cheeseburger. What's wrong with cheeseburgers? And it's like, I don't know, but I just don't like how it's working out right now.
Yeah.
So that was a really huge disconnect. And it was kind of like, okay, well, we're not having sex, so what else are we, what else? So it was kind of like, all right, just, whatever. But it just, all it did was eat at the disconnection. And when I like share that with people, I get so much like, oh, well, we use it to like fuel our fire, and well, it works out for us, it's fine for us. But it's like at the root of it, and that's my opinion. I can only share my opinion, my experience. I feel like we used that as an excuse several times before too. Like we tried to use like porn as like a pregame. I'm like, okay, you like it, maybe it'll help, you know. But it was just like now having the connection that I have with my husband, like there's no comparison. You know,
agree.
it's like it's almost like, oh well, I take drugs because they help me, you know, focus on this or make me feel better about this, and it's like, okay, but those drugs are bad. Like, and at the root of it, it's kind of like a crutch because like you need to be able to function without them, you know?
Yeah, you're giving away your power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just eating at the disconnection, and it was like a crutch that we were using to kind of like, I don't know. But when we got rid of it, like when we were just like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. And it's funny because like I had been like telling like we grew up like Christian, so that was like one thing, even though that's not like our belief system anymore. But it was just like I was telling my husband like I don't like it. Like it just doesn't make me feel good. And he was just kind of like brushing it off. But then like after a while, he's like, I think I'm gonna stop watching porn. And I was like, why? And he's like, I think I'm getting like bad karma. Like, he's like, I just noticed like every time I go and sneak and watch porn, we end up in like a really huge argument. Like even though you don't know about it, he's like, I just feel like God is like showing me like what this is actually doing to my marriage. And so he was just like, I think like I don't want to watch it anymore. Like I want, you know, something different. Like I want to connect with you. Like I want us to get through this. So we decided like, okay, we're going to do away with porn. We're not doing it anymore. We're not giving into that like culture. And like I said, following that, that's when like we really got deep into that like spiritual path and like focusing on each other and that intimacy and sex on like a spiritual level. And it's like, it's next level. Like it's not anything that any of that can offer. But I feel like you can't even attain that when you're indulging in this.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's bringing other people into your bedroom, into your love life, and it's creating less intimacy, unrealistic expectations. There's a lot of problems with young kids, like you said, having access to it so early. And like you said about like pre-90s, I actually think it's worse now because so many kids are getting smartphones at such a young age. Yeah. I want to do a whole episode on this. People who have listened to a lot of my episodes, they know how I feel about like young kids with smartphones.
Yeah.
And the potential problems that come with it, with just having unlimited access to the internet unsupervised. I mean, we already had that even before smartphones with computers, right? And maybe naively, parents, you know, back then might have thought, oh, like not big deal. Like if I'm not supervising or making sure the content that is being viewed is appropriate for their age and all of that. But now it's even worse because they have complete access to the internet at all times, unlimited information and unlimited types of imagery. Yeah. And so it can create addiction, all types of things, and unrealistic expectations of what sex is supposed to be like, what women are supposed to be. And then there's also like abuse even within that industry. Right. So I definitely think there's a lot of problems with it. And I agree. I think that you can, I mean, there's so many stories like yours where once they get rid of that, they're able to deepen their intimacy and strengthen their bond in their relationship. And that's actually something Kim Anami also talks about, which I think is pretty cool. You got to check her out.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So now coming to the end of this, like all these things that you guys went through, what is it that helped, like what was the final point that made you decide like we're going to heal our marriage? I know you said it was like that point when you found out about your son. Like what tools helped you do that? Did you just figure it out on your own? Or did you like read books? Like what is it that made you guys just like come to where you are today to figure out how to do it? Are you guys just like really good at winging it and figuring it out?
We've definitely done a lot of winging it, I'm not gonna lie. So I feel like we had a lot of like checkpoints, I like to say. Like it was like literally like God would put us through like a test and he'll be like, all right, checkpoint, level up. Like, okay, checkpoint, level up. Yep. So it's like there's like a lot of different like points that I can like go back and be like, okay, yeah, that was where we got here. That was where we got here. But like it was like we finally got to this point where it was like everything came to like a head. And like through that, like I mean like if you follow me, like you know, like we've gone through everything from like domestic abuse to like infidelity. Like there's just been so many dark places in our marriage, and that's why I'm so proud of us. And that's why I like root for like, if you want to stay in your marriage and you and your partner actually like want to make it work, like you can get through it, you know, because
and
like,
not only just make it work, but like thrive and heal and like restore.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, like that's like such a testimony.
Yes, literally. It's funny you say that, because I was literally I had a Facebook memory pop up, and it was from like 8 years ago. No, maybe it was like 6 years ago, and it was like I had said something like, I was like, I know that God is using my marriage right now so that I can create a bigger testimony later, or something like that. And I was like, wow. Because it was just like, it was really hard. Like, and especially being young, like I tell my husband all the time, like, I'm shocked that we're still together. Because we went through a lot, and it wasn't out of like ill intentions. It was just out of us being young and misguided, you know? And so like everything kind of like came to a head where it was like over time we were kind of like slowly opening back up to each other and slowly healing and slowly like sharing. But then like we finally got to like a like point where we were just like, okay, like tell all. Like I'm gonna tell you like everything I've ever done, felt, like in this marriage, like, you know, like my real viewpoint, like how I felt about you doing that, or like you like whatever. Like we just had like a session where we just like spilled everything, and like we just like cried, and like for days, like it literally was like over a course of like 3 days. It was like a huge like healing like ceremony. And after that, it was just like, it was like, you know, after you cry, like how you just like, oh, like you just feel so much better. It was literally like that. It was like a breath of like fresh air. And from that point moving forward, like we just continued to build on that. And it was like during that journey we had received like a lot of tools. Cause like I said, like we went to counseling, like we were reading books, we were doing a lot of things, but because we were still kind of like keeping walls up to each other, and we weren't still being like 100% honest with each other, like we weren't able to receive it the same way. So it was like after that happened, we were really able to like start implementing those things, implementing the things that we had learned in counseling, implementing the things that like we had learned about. And like we were just like doing a lot of like self-study. Like my husband like I'm so proud of him, coming from like where he came from, like I said, like that early exposure and like porn addiction and like all of that. And like now like he like studies like ancient like Chinese methods of like like I don't even know, like he studies so much stuff that has to do with like semen retention and like sex secrets and like how to like all these things that are like have to do with like maintaining his own like control and not, you know, like overindulging, or like, you know, just like for the sake of, for one, like him growing as a person, and two, like for him being like the man that I need, you know, for the times when I don't, you know, if I'm going through it, I don't want to, you know, have sex. Like he doesn't feel like it's such a big difference from back in the day where it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do, to now he's like, it's okay, like take your time. Like he'll tell me all the time, because I still have like little moments where I'll get like emotional, like if we get like, you know, if he wants to do it and I'm just like, I'm not up to it, and I'll still get like really emotional because I'm like, I don't want to disappoint you. And he's like, it's okay. Like he's like, we can go a week, a month, 2 months. He's like, when it happens, like it's gonna be worth the wait. Like it's okay. Like he's a completely different person, and it's been a lot of winging it, a lot of like studying on our own, a lot, because like I said, no one ever taught us these things. And that's why we share the little things like, oh, like marriage secrets, or, you know, it's not that it's like necessarily a secret. It's just that no one ever shared it with us. So it's like all the things that we've kind of learned on our journey along the way, just like with our own, just journeying out on our own, we kind of wanted to like start sharing that with other people that no one probably ever told them either.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so I want to shift a little bit about talking about your book. You have a book called Revised Not Repeated, A Brown Mom's Guide to Breaking Generational Curses in Parenting. Can you tell me about that book?
Yes. That's a mouthful, I know.
I just failed at that. I don't think it's that much of a mouthful.
So I actually started writing this book back in, I think it was like 2019, like early 2019. I started writing it, like I was just randomly, I don't even know what I was doing one day, and like the title just popped into my head. Like, God just gave me the title, and I was like, okay. And that was like before I had like my platform, before I was doing any of this. And I was just kind of like just going through my own parenting journey and like still learning, you know, on my own. But like I was like really, really starting like to implement like the intentional parenting, the gentle parenting, and like changing the dynamic of like how I parented, because it was so different from like how I was parented or what I experienced, not even just from like my parents or like just like our culture, like in general, like, and especially like brown parents. It was like we had like this, oh gosh, like culture that embraces like certain parenting styles and certain like habits that I just felt like were toxic. And it was like growing up, I was like, why is this normal? Like, and it's like everybody would just kind of like laugh about it. And I'm like, this isn't funny. But it was like at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to be like the outcast, you know, of the group. And so I remember like I wrote down the title and I started writing on it, and then I stopped and I never came back to it. And so it was after like back in 2021, but it was like maybe like August, July, something like that. And my husband had just published his book. And so, or he actually hadn't published it. He was still writing it, but he was like at the end of it. And like, I just kept getting this voice in my head, like God was telling me like, go back to your book. And I'm like, what book? It's like, go back to your book. It was like every day. I had completely forgotten about it. But I've always loved writing, and like watching him write, I was like just getting really inspired. I was like, I really want to write, but like I don't know if I have the time. Like I have all this going on, and I have 3 kids, and you know. And so like that message just kept coming back to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so then I was like, oh my God, okay. So I'm like going back in my computer, and I couldn't remember the title because obviously this was like years before that I had written it down. So I'm like searching through everything, and I'm like, did I have, like, am I tripping? Did I have a book? Like, and so like it took literally like, I was searching for like 3 days. I would give up and I would come back at it, give up, come back at it. And then one day I found it, and it was like in my Google Docs, like my old Google Docs, and it popped up, and I was like, oh my God. And so it literally, I think I had only written like the first like chapter and a half or something like that. And from that point, I think it was like August, my book was published in November. I was writing like nonstop. Like I just got so inspired, and it was like, it dawned on me that it was perfect that I put it down at that time, because I'm like, I've learned so much more since then that I would not have been able to offer as much then as I can now. But I just really wanted something. For one, I wanted something that I felt like me as a brown mom and like other brown moms can relate to, and that's why I gave it that title and gave it like the representation of like a brown mom on the cover and a brown child. Because when I started doing like self-study and looking into like parenting books, you don't see a lot of parenting books that are written by brown women or men or you know, anything. It's just not common. And it kind of frustrated me that it's like that's a constant like stereotype of like, oh, you're parenting like a white mom, that's a white person thing. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, so I really
I hate that.
I hate it so much. And I really wanted that representation of like, this is not just a white mom thing. It's a thing, you know, like, and it's a good thing, and it's okay.
And it's never good to like cast entire groups as like a monolith, like as if they all have one way of thinking, one way of parenting, one way of doing this in life. Like, no, sorry, no. Exactly.
It's not true. And I felt like that was one of the reasons, like with me growing up and feeling like I think I posted about when I posted my first like gentle parenting video, and I was like, I had it in my drafts for like 3 months because I was so scared to share it. Because prior to that, it's like I had my platform, but I was just sharing general like motherhood, like just motherhood in general, you know, not specifically on like how I parented my children, because I was so scared that people were gonna judge me. And I was just like, social media is just it can already be a very toxic place as is, and I just try to stay like as positive as possible. I have enough things to be stressed about. So I was just like, I don't want to share this. Like, I don't want people like telling me that I'm raising my kids wrong, or, you know, other things. So it was like 3 months later that I finally shared it, and like it went viral. And I seen like how many people were like, oh my God, like you parent like me. Oh my God, you parent like me. And I've always been told this is wrong. And my family's always judged me, and I have no family support. And so like, I just really wanted something that, number one, like that my community specifically could resonate with and look at and be like show a family member like, no, this is not just for white people. Like, look at this. But like just can relate to, and have something that like they feel like it's targeted to them, and not like they're an outcast, and feel like they do have like a support system, you know, even if they might not have a support system. But beyond that, I just wanted something in general for people that are like unfamiliar with this parenting style, that it's new to them, or if they are just like wanting to get started on it and they just need something very basic. For me, it was like a lot of the books sometimes are like overwhelming. I'm like, okay, 1,227 pages, like, and it's a lot to take in. And then it's like, okay, where do I start? You know, so I just wanted like a really easy, like, here's some really easy, good, like practical things. This is where you start. And then also, like, I wanted something that's like short, like you can see it's super short. And like as a mom, I'm like, I do a lot of like audiobooks because I don't always have time to read. But then it's like sometimes I miss like being able to like highlight things, like go back. Yeah. And I feel like when I read like my first like parenting book all the way through, I just felt like so accomplished. And I'm like, I want other moms to feel this way that might not have the time to dedicate to read a whole 1,000-page book or 800-page book. You know, they might only have, you know, a few moments out of every day to read a book. And I've had so many people reach out to me and they're like, oh my God, I read your book in like 2 days and it helped so much and I just feel so accomplished. And I just think that's like a really great feeling, and it's a really great like motivator to like continue to learn and grow. So that was like my motivation. Those are my goals in publishing my book.
That's awesome. And for those listening or watching who don't have your same background, can they also benefit from the book? Or is it specifically for brown moms, do you feel like?
No, yeah. Anybody. I've had dads buy my book like, and tell me like, oh my God, this helped me, you know, feel like have a better connection with my child. So I feel like any parent can relate to the book, and any parent can learn from the book. Yeah.
Perfect. So why is it so important then for people who are like new to this idea of breaking toxic patterns from past generations? Why is it so pivotal and important for that in parenting? Can you explain it? Like what does it do when you break that?
Oh God, I feel like it just starts. I mean, how do I answer that? It starts a whole new generation. Like, and the more that, I mean, as like from a community perspective, it's like the more that we phase out some of those toxic patterns, I just feel like collectively we're raising a completely different generation of people. And I feel like I can't wait until all of our kids get older. I have so many people that are like, oh, these kids are going to grow up and be so entitled, and they're going to be this and that and the next. And I'm like, just wait. Like, I'm so happy that this wave is happening. Like, I've never been so happy for, like, a trend. I'm so happy that this parenting style became, like, trendy, and it's reaching so many different people. Because so many different people. Because I feel like when all of these kids grow up, it's going to be such an amazing generation of people. Just looking at my children, and it's like when people make like snarky comments online, I just like laugh at it. Like someone had made a comment like the other day kind of referencing that, like, because my child did something behind my back, and then my 3-year-old, and then I disciplined him for it by like making him clean it up, but then I let him help me anyway. I don't know if you've seen that video.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And they were like, oh, something to the effect of like, well, you know, just imagine what this could do for like, you know, men who are rapists and they don't learn what no means. And I'm like, are you saying that?
No.
Like, what? Like, it's like the comments are so far-fetched. So I really can't wait to see, like, what this next generation is going to look like. And I feel like the more parents that get on board and the more parents that, like, understand, like, the bigger picture of this, we're just going to raise such an amazing community of little people.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's creating big waves for sure. And I was kind of raised, I think, looking back now, I didn't realize then, but I was kind of raised in a positive, respectful, gentle parenting way before it was even a thing, before there was like a word for it.
Right.
And I don't even think my parents, like my mom's like, I don't know any kind of wording like that. It was just what she did, and I didn't realize that it wasn't as common as it is becoming now today.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, children is like the innocence within them, and like we're us as parents doing what we can to protect our children and to hold them and raise them in a way where they feel secure and loved. And like I love everything you're sharing about that. And so,
and I mean, like, it's funny because, like, my mom will always be like, you better not be talking bad about me. But it's like, I have a great relationship with my mom. I talk to my mom probably like 5 times a day. And I feel also, like, very blessed. I feel like a lot of people ask me, like, oh, so, like, does this mean that you had a terrible upbringing? I'm like, no.
Yeah, no.
Like, I wasn't abused. I feel like there's different levels to, like, parenting and, like, intentional parenting. And that's why I'm like, I don't blame the last generation. I don't go around, like, shaming, like, oh, shame on, because everybody had their different motives. And I know with, like, my mom specifically, and we've, like, talked about this, even though there are, like, certain aspects of how she parented me where, like, I would not pass those things on to, like, how I'm parenting my children. We definitely have our differences.
Yeah.
And I definitely have my own, like, little personal traumas just from little things about my childhood, not even just with my mom, with my dad. But she wasn't a bad parent. And I've had to, like, explain it to her. I'm like, you're not, like, I don't think you're a bad parent. She had her things that she was trying to escape from. Like, she came from things in her family where she was like, I'm not ever going to let that happen to my child. And it was like, those were the things that she focused on, is like, I made sure this didn't happen to you and that, didn't happen to you, because these were the things that caused me trauma. And that was her way of intentionally parenting me and making sure I didn't have to go through those things. And I'm blessed to not have had to go through those things. And I think that if we can accept that each generation, we are supposed to grow and we are supposed to adapt to change, and the new information and knowledge available to us. Like, in that generation, they didn't even have a lot of the same knowledge and understanding of, like, how children's brains work and like development and all those things. So it's like, how can you parent in this way? How can you know not to, like, scream at your child, or some of these things that were probably normalized back then when you didn't even have this information available to you.
Yeah.
Where I do want people to take accountability is, like, now that this information is available, now we have to level up. Of course, our children are probably going to have things where they're like, yeah, my parents did that and that was crazy. And now we have this information, so we're not doing that anymore. And it's like, I expect that with every generation, but at the very least, that is what we should be doing. Every generation should be taking accountability and acknowledging the new information that is available and educating themselves and leveling up to the next level.
Yeah, I think it's so important to preface that, like, everyone's doing their best for the most part, and we're all just navigating life based on our own lens and our experience. And so this isn't about, like, blaming your parents in the way that you grew up, because even myself, who grew up with a respectful parenting kind of way, I still have my own traumas. Like, everybody has their traumas. Like, trauma is trauma, right? Whether it's little, it affects you as a child in different ways, depending on each thing. So yeah, this is like, I love that you, like, talking to your mom, you're like, no, Mom, you're great. This is just like us learning from all of our experiences and moving on as we go with the next generation, for sure. And my dad, that went with my dad too. He was breaking his own generational trauma from the way that he was raised. He didn't have a great upbringing, had a lot of trauma with it, and he told himself, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it differently when I raise my kids. So it's similar type of thing, and I think that's so beautiful.
Right. And that's why I think it's, like, important that's why I like the term intentional parenting and not, like, as opposed to, like, gentle parenting, because it's all about doing everything with intention. When you have intention, you have goals. You know what you're doing and why you're trying to do it. Because I feel like you can still be the most well-intended parent, and your child can still come out with a lot of trauma. Because just because you're well-intended does not mean that you're intentional. Like, you could be doing this for whatever you feel like is the greater good of your child, but if you're not doing your research, if you're not educating yourself, if you're not learning and understanding and connecting, with your child, it's like you cannot be 100% effectively intentional. You'll just be doing your best. And it's like that's you can't blame someone for that, but in the same token, it's like that's the difference. And I feel like that's the disconnect with like a lot of parents, where it's like, oh my God, how dare you have trauma? I did my best with you, but it's like there's a difference between doing your best and being intentional.
Absolutely. So there's something that you said, one of your, like, I wrote down some of the things that you said in your reels before that were really meaningful to me. You said, in order for us to raise children who are accountable for themselves, we also have to be accountable for ourselves and our actions. And you were stressing the importance of like saying sorry, because this is something I've talked about before too in my videos in the past about like, if you can't even say sorry yourself to your kids when you've made a mistake, how can you expect them to say sorry to you? And this is kind of like what we were just talking about, like being holding yourself accountable.
Right.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I think that like saying sorry to your kids is one of those things where it's like a new thing in a sense. Like in the past, it was like, I feel like when I apologize to my kids, or people hear me apologize, or talking about apologizing to my kids, it's like foreign, almost like children don't deserve apologies. And I think that people are really, hopefully, like on a whole level, people are coming to the understanding that like children are going to model what we do before they do what we say.
That is the biggest thing in parenting. Like if there could be one slogan, that's what it is, I think, when it comes to parenting. Yeah,
literally. And it's like, that's why you can have parents that will have certain actions, and those children will grow up with those same actions. It's like, but I told you better. I taught you better. It's like, but what were you doing? What were you doing during that time? So that, I don't want to say it came natural to me, because like I said, it's not how I was brought up as what was normal. But it was like, once I came to the realization of like needing to apologize to my kids, I think it was like when they were like at that age of like understanding an apology, like they were still pretty young, and I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. Like how, like, no wonder when I'm telling them like, say sorry, and they're like, sorry? Like, there's nothing there, because how do you understand what a heartfelt apology is if you've never received one?
Wow. Yeah. I'm just like letting that sink in.
Yeah, I think it's the best way. People look at me crazy when I tell them like I don't force my children to say sorry. And
it can be tough, because it's hard to not do it, because you're like trying so hard to get them to do, like, so much of parenting is to get them to raise them right, to raise them well, so that they are empathetic beings that want to apologize when they make a mistake. But then you find yourself in a situation where you're trying to say sorry, and then they finally do, and you're like, oh wait, that wasn't heartfelt at all. Why did I do that? Say
it like you mean it. Like,
why did I do that? Yeah, absolutely. And it goes so much farther when you're willing to say sorry. I can't even tell you how many times that just by saying sorry to my child, that you could just see everything within them relax. Their shoulders relax. The love just like pours in. You can see them just like almost like tears in their eyes that they see like, okay, mommy, like she got it. She did something that I didn't like, and that hurt my feelings. And like she's holding space for me, which is just the same thing for your relationships with your partner. Like holding space for their feelings, and like being willing to acknowledge when you've messed up instead of pointing the finger at them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And another really important thing I've seen you talk about recently is about how you handle interactions, that you don't force interactions with strangers with your kids. And even though these are both like small examples of things that we're talking about, they actually play a much bigger role, I think, about how we view our children, how we handle parenting with our children and raise them, right? Like, so this is an individual experience, but it really holds a bigger picture, I think, about like how we look at our kids. And it's really easy to just want to be dictator, right? And that's kind of what we were taught what the past generations were taught. I'm the boss. Listen to me. Do what I say.
Exactly.
You know. And then we saw the damage that comes from that, right, with the next generation as we grew older and everything. But can you explain how you respond when your child doesn't like talk and respond to a stranger who's talking to them, just so people can get a picture?
Yeah. Typically, like, and I kind of talked about this a little bit in the video. So if like someone comes up to my child and they say something, for one, I think I get a lot of negative responses with this one, and it's like kind of funny to me because we grew up in that time of like stranger danger, but now like all of a sudden it's like, no, it's rude not to talk to strangers. So it's like, which one is it? But like, I think people imagine that like someone comes up and they're like, hi, and I'm like, go away, and we just like snarl at the person. It's like, no, we're still, I'm still upbeat, I still smile, if someone's speaking to my child, if they'll say like, oh, hello, or, I like your shoes or whatever, then I'll just make sure like, did you hear them? He likes your shoes, or did you hear him say hi? And then if I see like they still don't want to interact, I'll just be like, oh, well, thank you so much, or, have a great day, whatever. Like, I respond on their behalf because like, for me, it's not a big deal. They don't know that person.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I trying to make a connection between being rude or polite and speaking to strangers? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you teach that to a young child?
And like it goes back to modeling. They'll see the way that you're responding, and over time, that is how they will respond. Instead of because I was listening to an example. I think I read it. I remember if I was listening to a podcast episode by like a parenting author I like or something, but she gave this example where she's like, imagine if you're at a baby shower and it's your baby shower and you're getting gifts, right? And you open a gift and then you haven't said thank you yet or something, and then your mom is like, say thank you. Right. Say thank you, like in front of a big group of people. Like, how actually kind of humiliating is that? And
awkward.
And uncomfortable.
Yeah.
All those factors. And so it's so pivotal to put ourselves in their shoes and realize that like they're much littler than us. They've only been on this earth for, a few short years, and they're just learning. They're taking in everything. And instead of wanting to like just stamp out any quote unquote imperfectness, which is impossible because we're not even perfect ourselves.
Exactly.
We can just model that behavior, and it goes a long way. It's tempting to want to like try to get them to say thank you or get them to acknowledge, but I do see the value in the modeling and respecting their beingness and individuality. And one time I had an experience like that when my firstborn was still quite young. He was probably 2. And I had heard of this notion. I was of the not forcing your kids to say thank you or sorry and stuff. And I was like still dabbling with it, but wasn't able to fully commit. And I don't even know if I still am fully committed to that. Like sometimes it's very hard.
Yeah.
But I like love the aspect of it. But someone said something to him, my son, that a compliment, right? And he smiled so big, and he didn't say thank you, but he smiled so big and gave like an outward reaction. And I think at the time I said something like, "Oh yeah, you want to say thank you, Elvis," or something. And then the man was so sweet. He's like, "Oh, he already told me thank you with his eyes." And I'm like, wow, what if we could just start like just being less obsessed with like this being the exact way, and like because body language and communication goes a long way too, and looking at our kids in that way too, So that was a really cool example to me of like just wanting to make something perfect when really it's like it already was perfect and beautiful, and I didn't have to go and say that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, a few things. One thing I feel like we as adults, well, I don't want to say we specifically, but there's like an obsession with like children behaving a certain way or acting a certain way. And I feel like if us as adults understand how children work, like developmentally, that they're still going to be children. They're not going to be tiny adults. Like, so if we lower our expectation, like if we go through a grocery store and there's a child crying and the mother looks stressed and we just mind our business, or if we walk over and say like, are you okay? Like then there's less pressure on the parent to feel like my child needs to be perfect, because 90% of why we feel that way is because society makes us feel that way. We feel like we're going to be judged as parents. And so I feel like we have to like the part of the community that is not parents, or maybe like if we're out, we're not with our children, we have to be able to like release that, like make people feel okay to know like their children are children, because like you said, like they're children, they're gonna be children, and they're still new to the world, and we expect for them to like learn so much. We have such high expectations when they're so young, and it's like, how? Like something that I was thinking about maybe like a year ago, and I was like telling my husband about this like concept, and I'm like, dude, children, it's literally like being in a foreign country that you've never been to before, and like you're still learning the language. You don't really understand the interactions. The culture is completely different. Like imagine like going to a country and then like walking up and like kicking a stone, and it's like, say schmoggin, and it's like, schmoggin? Like, why do I do that? Because if you kick a stone, it's disrespectful. Okay. And it's like, you don't like, until you've actually been in that country for like long enough to understand why kicking a stone is disrespectful and you need to say schmoggin, that schmoggin is just gonna be like, someone told me to say that, so that's what I say, you know? So it's like, I feel like the modeling the response for them plays such a big part, because it's literally, it lets them see everything play out. It's like, it's a visual aid instead of trying to force something that's not authentic so they could go through their whole life, you know, like, I mean, maybe not their whole life, like hopefully eventually they'll learn, but it's just like, why not let them develop their own authenticity? That doesn't mean we don't still teach. Like we can still be at home and we still practice. I still practice with my kids. Okay, you know, when someone gives you something, say thank you. You know, we still practice our manners, but I don't put them in a spotlight when they're out in public and something happens. It's just another lesson. Yeah. It's not a test.
Yes. And I love what you said too about like helping others feel comfortable too and not expecting perfection. And it's a perfect example with that stranger. Like if I had known that stranger already felt like he had, you know, showed appreciation just with his smile, like I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have said say thank you, because it was all about like, oh, I don't want him to think that my kid's ungrateful. Like right? It wasn't even because I'm like, I'm trying to make sure he turns out this way. It was literally because we're so influenced by our culture and our society and how we're going to be perceived. So, like, we have to, like, let that go and focus on, like, their beingness and their individuality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you. What is something you hope for all parents to be able to practice to help raise this next generation of children? Like, if there was one thing that you could hope.
One thing? Oh, gosh.
Like, because, you know, it's like you said, a lot of times, like, you don't have time to read a whole book. Someone who's listening to this might be, like, driving somewhere because it's, like, their only time to squeeze it in. And, like, what's just, like a practical tool for someone, like, to get started? Like, what's it, like, I feel like that slogan, like, even what we said, something like that.
I would say, I feel like every time I answer these questions, it's never, like, a slogan or it's never, like, the ideal answer. Right. But, I think that one thing that I would love more parents to do that I feel like is so, especially like, I mean, I can't speak for other countries in a whole, but I would say especially like in America or like in the United States. And I say it because like I said, I went to Belize recently, and like, it's just so different. The connections that parents have with their children is so different. And one thing I feel like we should focus on more is like connection. Having like, when you have a connection with someone, you analyze things differently. Everything plays out differently. And I feel like because of like our culture in the United States, and like it's like fast paced and go to work and make money and go to work and come home and be tired and cook dinner, you know, it's really hard to foster connections. Like we said earlier, it's hard to foster connection with your spouse. And like if you have more than one child, like, oh my God, you know? So it's like making time to like for one, to build a bond and connection with that child, and two, like taking time even in moments of like frustration, even like in moments of like pressure, to really like dig into that connection and connect with your child and forget everything else and everybody else and just focus on that little like soul that you brought into the world. I feel like it changes how you interact with them. It changes how angry you get at them or how you perceive. And that the video I posted the other day is like a perfect example, because I never actually like told the story of how it happened, but I had so many negative comments. So I'll just like really quickly. So I was painting our travel trailer, and my 3-year-old loves to paint. We've been going through this transition. We've been out of our home for 2 years. Sorry, 2 years. Oh my God, 2 months. And that's like the only home he's ever really known, because we've been there since he was a baby. So he always asks me, he's always like, Mommy, I want to go back home. I want to go back home. And I'm like, I know, but we're building a new home. We're building a trade, getting him really excited about the little tiny home. And so he loves painting. And so I was painting. So he's like really excited. He wants to help me paint. And me, like, my initial response is like, no, because I'm like, this is just a big job. Like, I don't want him to make a mess, So I'm like, no, baby, you can't help me paint. So he's mad at me. So he's like, he comes back and he's like, I want my ball. And I'm like, okay, I'll get your ball. And I step away for 1 second. It was like the minute I grabbed the ball, I was like, oh no. And I ran back and he had already like had the paint. Like he had already came there and painted. And like it was like, how you respond to something before you even have time to like think about it. So like as soon as I came back in, he was like, look, Mommy, I did it. And I was like, Caio!
Yeah.
And he was like he just got so sad. Like I just saw it in his eyes. And like he didn't even say anything. He just looked so sad, like he was about to cry. And I was like,
it's so innocent.
Oh. And so yeah, I still went through. I was like, you can't do that. Mommy told you, that you can't do this and you need to listen to whatever, the whole lecture, whatever. I made him clean it up, all that. I had him go back inside. But then I prepped the area for him to come back out and help me. And in people's minds, it was like, oh my God, where's the lesson? All you taught him was that if he disobeys you, then you'll just give him what he wants anyway. Like, But I'm like, you were not there to experience that. And what means most to me in that moment is that connection with my child. I connected with my child in that moment, and I saw that my child was not trying to be disrespectful.
No.
He was excited. And we're building a house, and I've been pumping him up for months about this, and he wanted to help me. And it wasn't like let me hide the paint. Like he was like showing me, like, look, I did it. You know? I'm not gonna like shame him for that.
No. And how old is he too?
He's 3.
3. Oh my gosh. Context matters. Age matters. Their development matters. Like all that stuff plays a big role. Even if it was an older kid too, though. Like the intention behind it.
The intention means so much.
So
and it's
much.
like that's what I was trying to explain, but I was just like, if people focus on the connection with their child instead of thinking like what punishment is proper for this and what if they do this in society and what will people think, and just think about like my child was trying to connect with me in that moment. No, it was not the best way to do it, but a disciplined action took place, and I'm still allowed to connect with my child.
Yeah.
Even when they've misbehaved, even when they're getting on my last nerves, even when they're throwing a tantrum, I'm still allowed to connect with my child.
And that's the best thing. That's what's going to help them get through it the best.
Exactly.
Imagine if your partner, same situation with your partner, right? Your partner's like, well, they did something wrong, so now I have to like shame them, shun them, walk away from them to teach them a lesson. Distance them. That makes you feel more distanced. That does not help you reconnect and help you build a stronger relationship.
Yeah.
This is so good to end on that because I totally agree with you.
Yeah. I think if people focus more on that connection, the world would be a better place.
I love that. Cool. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you?
Instagram is my main platform. They call me Mama Bennett. We also have our family Instagram, the Bennett Gang. We also have our TikTok, the Bennett Gang. And then I have my marriage TikTok, Mama Papa Bennett. I have way too many platforms. And then my website is mamabennett.com, and that's where like my book is and those other resources that I have.
Great.
So.
I will put those links below for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I had such a great time with you in this conversation, and I learned so much. I'm so inspired by you, and thanks for all that you do.
Likewise. Thank you.